Hey guys, it's Miss Ellis. It's been a while since we've seen each other, so of course I wanted to just say hey, and just kind of introduce the lesson for today. We're going to be going over dividing fractions. The objective is I can divide whole numbers by unit fractions and unit fractions by whole numbers. And so I'm gonna go through it, and articulate the high points, and then of course try to remind you guys of like some key phrases that we used to use in class that really helps you guys get through this. Also, I want to say that you guys are doing really well for the most part as far as getting your assignments and things in, so congratulations on that, guys. We just have just a few weeks of school left, so give me everything that you have, and if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera off so that I can pull up our screen for today. So the first word that I just want to go over just as a quick reminder is what the numerator actually is. So it counts how many equal parts are actually being described. So if you look at this picture here, you see that there are 5 equal parts that are there, but the 4/5 is actually describing how many parts of the 5 are actually being shaded. So there are 4 out of 5 that are being shaded. That is your numerator or your top number. As far as the denominator goes, it tells the total number of equal parts or groups into which the whole or group has been divided. And so that's going to be our bottom number. So for the most part, we all do really well on this. So again, if you start going through this video and you have any issues with it, or you just don't remember something, please send me a message on Class Dojo and let me help you. So our unit fraction. A unit fraction represents one part of a whole that has been partitioned into a given number of parts. So unit, of course, we used to talk about the word unit to be unified as a group. We want to be one solid group. So if you have a whole that is divided into 3 parts like you see here, there's only one part out of the 3 that is shaded. So every unit fraction, the numerator is always going to be 1. So again, if you have a unit fraction, so I could just really list like a ton of these: 1/6, 1/4, 1/12, 1/13, 1 anything, right? This is going to be your unit fractions. That's what they look like. It's only 1 out of those equal parts. That's what a unit fraction looks like. So I also want to go over 2 anchor charts before I actually jump into the lesson. So whenever we're dividing fractions, there are 2 different ways that we can do it. We can start with a whole number and divide it by a fraction. And so the first number is always how many you have. So if you look at the problem, 3 divided by 1/4, we're starting with 3. So we can kind of think about 3 sandwiches, right? We have 3 sandwiches, and then we want to divide them, divided by 1/4. So we want to know how many sandwiches would you have once we finish, or how many pieces of the sandwich would you have after you actually divide. So I'm going to work one of those sample problems and set that up. So 3 divided by 1/4. Our key phrase is, if you start with a whole number, then what? That's right. We're going to end with a whole number. So if we're going to end with a whole number, what do you think is happening here? So we always take our whole number and multiply those to get our answer. So 3 times 4 would be 12. So we would have 12 pieces of a sandwich, or 12 sandwiches once we finish dividing by 1/4. The model here, where it says solve with the model. So basically you have your 3 sandwiches and you're going to divide them into 1/4. So 1/4 means that you have to have, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And you cut it 3 times to get you those 1/4, right? So if you actually go back through and count those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, that is how many sandwiches you would have. So let's work one simple problem before we go to the other types of division problems. So it says that Mrs. Medina made 2 cakes for the students in her art class to share equally. Share equally means that we're going to have to do what? That's right, we're going to have to divide. So how many cakes are we starting with? 2 cakes. So remember, if you see the word, you can always write the number. Each student ate 1/12 of a cake, and both of the cakes were eaten. So that means that 1/12 should be written out as well. So if you start with 2, you're going to divide it by the 1/12. And so if you do this, again, start with a whole, end with the whole. So if we know that we have to end with the whole number, we simply will take our whole number and our denominator and multiply. What is 2 times 12? 24. So the question was, how many students are in Mrs. Medina's art class? 24 students. Let's do another one. Warren made 5 pans of brownies. So we have 5 pounds of brownies. He will slice the brownies into pieces. What does the word slice indicate? Okay, it indicates division into pieces, and each piece will be 1/10 of a size of a pan, of the size of a pan. So the question that they want is, how many slices of brownies will Warren create? How many slices of brownies will Warren create? So again, we're starting with a whole, so we must end with the whole. And so since we started off with 5 brownies and he's cutting them into 1/10 pieces, what should we do? Right? We're going to take our whole number and multiply it by the denominator. 5 times 10 is, that's right, it's 50. So our answer would be C. The other type of problems that we have is when we start with the actual unit fraction and then we want to divide it by a whole number. So we're starting off with 1/4 divided by 3. And so those models look a little bit differently. You can always go back to this anchor chart and review what that looks like. And since we have 1/4, basically you want to start off, that's because that first number is what you start with. And so if I start with 1/4, because this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 1/4 shaded, but I want to divide it by 3. If I divide by 3, so now you see that I have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. So I've done the division. And you want to know what fraction of the whole does each group actually receive. So just one portion of that. 1 out of what now? You have this one part that is circled, but how many individual squares do you have? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 1 out of 12. So again, here, if you start with a unit fraction, you will also end with a unit fraction. All right, so let's practice that on the next slide. Mr. Shore poured 1/3 pound of beans on a plate. He will separate those beans into 3 groups. So it looks like we are starting with 1/3, and then he wants to separate. So the word separate, of course, indicates division. We're going to separate that into 3 groups. And so we could model that. So we would basically be starting with 1/3. Doesn't matter if you go horizontally or vertically. And shade the 1/3. And then you're going to divide it by 3. So 1 cut, 2 cuts. So you have 1, 2, 3 groups there. You take one section of that. So we know that we're starting with the unit fraction. So our answer here must be a unit fraction. So with our unit fractions, don't forget that our top number or our numerator is always 1. So it has to be 1 over something. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 1 out of 9. You can also take your denominator and your whole number again. 3 times 3 gives you 9. But because you started with a unit fraction, you have to make sure that the 9 is the denominator and not a whole number. All right, so the last problem is going to be Hannah made 8 pints of fruit punch to serve to her guests at her birthday party. So she made 8, so that's what she's starting with. Hannah will pour 1/2 pint of punch into as many glasses as possible. So you want to divide it by 1/2. So it looks like, again, we're starting this time with a whole number. And if we start with the whole number, then we must end with the whole number. Good. We can take our whole number and multiply it by the denominator. 8 times 2 would give you 16. Whole number. And now it's time for you guys to practice on